So now we're going to use our next glaze. We're going to actually use a glaze on the roof here. And again, we're gonna water it down quite a bit from its really sludgy consistency. Now this next glaze we're going to use is a total art glaze. It's not a food glaze. It's kind of, you probably could say it's toxic. It's definitely got some weird stuff in it. It also is very thickness dependent. So the thinner it is, it has one color. If it gets a little thicker, it has another color. This is my sample cup. And as you can see, it has quite a change from one side to the other. And that is 1 coat, 2 coats, you can see there's still some, and 3 coats. So we're going to go for, we want this effect, which is probably fairly thin. And then if we put it on even thinner, it might just give us a lot of gray with a few green speckles, which in my mind is kind of like an old moss-covered roof, which would be awesome. Okay, so this particular glaze is called Lana's Rust, and as you can see, it's pretty thick. So we're going to get a little container. And we're gonna shake out the dust that's in it from something else. Well, I guess it's more on the bottom, but anyway. And we're going to put a little Lana's Rust in here. Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot, even though we don't really know, because we haven't tested, do the yin-yang, okay, how much is this, how much is that? If we do this, we do that, you know. This is at least a way to get started. With that test, we'll say, let's put that much water in. Let's go ahead and clean this brush. I did kind of like this brush this time. I might want to use a different brush. Let's go ahead and use this to mix anyway. And we want it more of a liquid than we want it as a glaze, I guess you could say. Because there's a lot of detail in this roof. We don't want to lose too much of that detail. So, boy, this is really just breaking down into chunks, not really thinning out, but it is there. And keep in mind, this is a cone 6 glaze, somewhere around 2100 degrees it will fire to. So, and like most glazes, you really don't know what they're going to look like in this state. You have no idea, and especially with a glaze like this, it has an ability to do several different things. And I like that in the sense that it's kind of an unknown. What is it going to do? It's kind of a known, but it's kind of an unknown. It's kind of an art by accident kind of moment. You know, we're letting the kiln and the material kind of do its own thing a little bit. I mean, we know a little bit about what it'll do. We don't particularly know what it's going to do in this instance because I've never tried it before. And it's kind of crazy to try it on a sculpture that, you know, you spent a lot of time on. So, you know, spend a lot of time on something and you put an untested glaze technique on it. That's pretty brave, Mark. Pretty brave. Yeah. Or stupid. I'm sure you'll all have plenty of opinions on that. So, and it could be that it hardly does anything. In which case we can fire it again. I think this particular glaze is, as I recall, she fires multiple times with multiple changes and comes out with really bizarre finishes. I believe this is from Lana Wilson. I don't know. I was kind of given a glaze recipe through a guy. So, or no, maybe I think this one came from a magazine article. So I've never met her. Don't know what she knows. From what I gather, she's brilliant and very talented. And she's nice enough to share her recipes out there with the rest of the world and let us make a mess of things. So, yeah, so that's what we're doing. Gosh, I hope I didn't do this side already. Did I already do this side? I think I did this side. No, I can't have. I started with the front. Oh, man. All right. Hardly seems to be anything on there. Yeah. I think we're going to call that good for now because more isn't necessarily better. All right. Now, that color, this glaze, Lana's Rust, we're also going to use on the base. Oh, I think we need to get we could use this one. But I want it to go on a bit thicker. And I want it to have, differences from one place to the next. So we're going to probably do one coat on everything everywhere. And like we just did with that, just rush through, get it on, and then we're going to come back and add more to key areas. Do I have enough? Do I have enough in here? And we're only using a little bit. I think it's one of those things that'll go a long way. And in terms of water and water content, and mixing it, eventually I'm going to throw this back in with the rest of the batch. And that'll be okay because this stuff, so long as you don't let this stuff dry completely out, it's not that hard to reconstitute it. So, but once it's dry, as I recall, this particular glaze is hard as rocks. So, we're just trying to get a nice quick coat on everything without getting any too much on the color. You can see how that's going on. It's going on, pretty well. And it's going on in multiple thicknesses in different areas, so that's okay because it's going to look very organic that way if we don't spend a lot of time on it. I think we need to add a little water. It's get a little chunkier. Here we go, mix that up. And what's interesting about this particular glaze is how thin it can go on and still make a dramatic effect. Got it up on the color there. Me and my wiggly hands. Trying to get it up into that. Oh, careful. You do have to stir this particular stuff around quite a bit. Alright, so why don't we just go ahead and follow along, and I will just work on glazing this. Woo! Okay, well, we've gone ahead and gotten our coats of Lana's rust on here. What we don't know is like, oh, it's one coat, two. No, it's scattered. It's very organic. It's very eclectic. It's very much what it did. we're we're good with that. We're gonna go ahead and call that done. We have to do a little cleanup here and there. And now we're ready for doing the backgrounds in here. And we're going to do these with the underglaze that we did out here. And we're going to use different colors on different squares. I have thought about just using the yellow on all of them and just making that a standard color. Because I see that from my color sample, my block sample, the background on all the other, on the block kit that I based this all on is all a standard background color. And that would make it easy in the sense that since we know we're going to do it as a light wash, we're going to take the underglaze, we're going to wash it down, and we're going to take our tiny little brush and scrub it into those areas very lightly so that it's just a wash. And then we're going to fire this to cone 6, and that could just burn all those colors out anyway, since it'll be a gas firing. I'm pretty sure if it was a glaze firing, it would be fine. Another thing we have to do is find out which one of my blues that I'm going to use is the windows here. Probably the sky blue, maybe the autumn sky would be fun. And then again, when we have this on the pillow, where we can do all these other flat things and not damage the artwork, we'll probably put the glaze in the windows. So that's going to be it for right now. I'm going to have to build a pillow support, which is probably going to be blankets covered with a piece of trash can liner so that it doesn't get everything dirty. And then we're going to go to town. We're going to fake it until we make it, and we're going to then fire this up and see what happens and be happy with what we got. All right, so stand by for me to get the pillow thing set up and get the underglazes mixed, and maybe even pick out my background glaze for the glass and any other crazy things I may come up with. So again, this is our first one. We're taking a lot of risks with this one. We are being happy with what we get. All right, just like a lot of things in life, you kind of got to be happy with what you get. So and sometimes it's not expected, you know. I wouldn't if this came out a certain way, it would not be unlike me to go, I hate it, and then 4 months later look at it again and go, oh my God, I just absolutely love it. Because it's one of those things where we have a preconceived notion of how we want it to be, especially if it was really contrived, and I'm like, oh, this blue is going to be this blue, and that background color is going to be that background color, and this green is going to be that green. We're going to put a clear on it. We're going to do this. We're going to do that, and it comes out all different. And yeah, sometimes I come back to those, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a wonderful thing that's happened here, out of my control, and yet, you know, the kiln gods or whoever, you know, has allowed whatever piece it is to come out exactly how it's supposed to come out, right? Because a lot of times you put an art piece in a firing, you know, you think you have control, but you don't always have control. I mean, we are not production firing ware here. We do not have a computer controlled kiln. We're using a gas kiln, which has a lot more irregularities, especially when it's a studio gas kiln. They don't have controls, they don't have a lot of sensors. So yeah, we're batting for gold and hoping we make it over the outfield fence. All right, so stand by, be ready for the next thing. We're going to be putting some wash into this area and some glaze on these windows. And then after that, we get to load it in the kiln again, but it's a different kiln this time. Okay, hang in there. Welcome back to Golden Soul Studios again. We're working on the big project Blockhouse 1. If you haven't joined us before, we're at the point right now where we're putting underglaze on a bisqueware, getting it ready for the glaze kiln. We've already done some glazing on here, and we're ready to put some background color in around the letters. So if you're not really caught up with this, you probably want to go back and look at some of the other previous previous videos. If not, boom, we're ready to put some background yellow in. What we've done is we've taken our yellow Mako and we've mixed it 3-to-1, so it's really liquidy and mostly water, I guess you would want to say. You know, it's a very thin mix because we're trying to put a wash in. We've created a wash to put in as a background for behind the letters. Remember, we're making blocks, children's blocks, and most children's blocks, letters, have a background finish around the letters that kind of shows the interior material a little bit. So really what we're saying is we're putting a wash in so that the white clay body is a little bit transparent through this. And it should be dull and not shiny when we're done. Frankly, I'm wondering if I shouldn't figure out a way to dirty it up a bit for the long run. But we're going to go ahead and do this now. Again, this is pretty much just a test piece for us. And all I'm really doing, and I'll give you a little close-up here in a minute, is basically dropping this blot in and moving around a little bit. Trying to be careful not to spill onto any of the other colors. And it's a very liquid material, so it really is just going right in there. It's a fairly quick process, and we should be done here with this in an hour or so, which is nice considering how much everything else takes. So I'm going to set that there. I'm also thinking that I was going to rub some of these areas with sandpaper and see what that looked like to bring some of the background out. So I'm using a piece of 80 grit. And what I'm kind of realizing is that I probably should have done this when it was still just wet clay and rubbed it out with a sponge or something, because this is a little messy and it's not going to be easy to get into these inside little corner areas. So I think that's taught us what we wanted to know. We just wanted to do a test on this. What is it like if I sand this a little bit? It's kind of working, kind of not, because this underglaze is really stuck well. So I'm excited about that, and I don't really mind that it isn't going to work, because in the future ones we're going to be doing things a little differently and will allow me to do this kind of thing, this distressing kind of work. The next one I do, I may want it to be so that the blocks look like they've really been used, they've really been tossed about quite a bit. Might dirtify it up like Hollywood does, you know, when they make a haunted house kind of thing. But then again, if it turns out really neat to have this bright, shiny blocks on top of a otherwise setting, the contrast and the conflict involved in that might be more of what I'm looking for. So we're going to try different things and come out with different ideas, and you know, who knows what it looks like when I make more of these. And you know, I don't know how many block houses I'm going to make in this series, because I have a couple of other ideas for other houses that I'd like to get to as, you know, sooner than later. So it may be a while before we see the last of this series. It may be a while before we see the one after this one. But either way, we're learning new things on this really quick. All right, so let's get going on this. We've learned this. And here we go. All right, so as you notice, I'm also stirring just about every time. Keep this very liquefied wash consistent. You can see I did this one already, and that looks really good to me. So you can see it's just basically dropping the water droplets in and smoothing them around a little bit. Get that stirred up. And I can kind of see when I stir it up, there's a little more yellow than when I don't stir it up. So I think when I stir it up, it gathers more on the brush tip off the bottom where it's probably settled out really quick. And if I think there's an area that's a little light, I can go back and do more. All right. All right, bouncing over to the B here. A little trickier in here. Hope that background noise from the street isn't too much today. I got the back door open because it's hot. I should be wearing my shorts. We're out here in the daytime right now doing this, as opposed to working on some of the other things here. There we go. It'll be interesting to see, I've said that so many times, what this little bit of color that's wicking up on the walls of the edges here and whatnot will do to the adjacent color. Whether it will have an effect or whether it'll just disappear. I mean, not forget the middle of these, huh? Alright, I see there's kind of a light spot up in this area here, so I can come back here now that it's a little drier, and add a little more. Alright, bumping over to the Y. I know, why you ask? Why not? So the colors here on the Y are yellow, the same yellow as this, and the middle is peach. Or what I'm hoping to be peach and not so much of a flesh color is the way it looks out of the container. So now if I was smart, I would take all my colors and then make a color sample plate of several different varieties, one for the gas kiln, one for the electric kiln, one with certain glazes, clear glaze over, one with matte glaze, you know, that kind of thing. And just have those around the studio for reference in the future. And I will be doing that in the future when I settle down on kind of the color palettes that I'm going to be interested in owning. Because there's a bunch of underglaze colors I don't think I'll ever need. But you never know. Can always add more as money allows. And you can have all the colors you want, you also have to store them. And as most potters I've met, artists, their storage needs are, their workspace is always smaller than their storage needs. So, like I said, you can have all the colors you want. If you don't have a place to put them, that kind of becomes awkward. You want your things to be in an accessible realm and rememberable realm, you know, not buried away in a box in the attic. A good way to forget you own anything. So I like to have things on the shelves where I can see them, with the colors I can see them, where I can be inspired by them. So having them put away is not something that works for me so well. Wow, look at that. We did the whole side. All right. I don't know how well you can see, but that's basically the process we're going to use for the rest of these. Okay, look at that. That looks great. Boy, that was pretty quick. That was pretty quick. All right, so we get to do this on the other three sides. And since I wrote down the formula of this, I will know even now or in the future how good that works. Once it's fired, I can come back to that information and know what I've done here. So again, we're going to be putting the yellow in all the cubes with the letters and the numbers. And then we're going to glaze the glass in the windows and door. And then it's ready for firing. Unless I come up with some other wild crazy ideas, like adding some glaze tips in here and see how it interacts with the other glaze. I have a leaf green that I like to use on bushes and whatnot, and I may put a few speckles of that in here to see how it reacts, if nothing else. All right, so what we do here is we cross our fingers and we're real gentle with this. We have to figure out, we're gonna just flip it over for now. It's gonna be a little trickier on the long side, but just flipping this over. It's a pretty sturdy sculpture. At least it feels pretty sturdy at the moment. And what I have is a big blanket, big fluffy blanket inside a trash bag here to support this. We're not putting any weight on it in any way, other than the weight of itself, which in some cases is a lot. In this case, it's not very much. Most sculptures you build, you don't have the ability to flip them on their sides very often. So this is kind of nice. And we're ready to go on this side now with the yellow. And we'll probably end up making more. Sure wish I could have done this when I was green. Would have been nice. Anyway, let's go ahead and go to time lapse or speed up shots. And because you've now seen what we're going to do with the background here, and like I said, we're going to put some just regular glaze color in here. We're going to use the aqua, and that's it. Whoa, everybody's racing today. So thanks for joining me, and stand by. Here comes the time lapse. right, we just got all our washes on the backgrounds around the letters. We've got our glaze in the windows. This sucker is ready to go in the kiln and fire to cone 6. 2150, I think it is. Or anyway, I will look it up. I always look it up before I do it. And we're excited about that. We're going to end the film right here for the day. And when we come back next week, we're going to load this in the kiln. We're going to load it with other things. We're going to fire that kiln. And we're going to pull the sculpture out and enjoy what we get, which we don't know what that will be because this is all experimental at this point. So anyway, thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.